Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 4 of Leo season. It's the last week of Leo season, which I'm kind of sad about. Kind of sad to wrap it up. And I've been looking forward to this week the whole time. I'm so excited for what is coming in today's lesson. Let's just start with the affirmation, shall we? The affirmation for this week comes from The Charge of the Goddess by Doreen Valiente. That's how it's spelled. Our affirmation is, all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. I love that. It's perfect. All acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. I really want to embrace that this week, and I hope that you do too. Making a ritual out of all things that are based in love and pleasure. So far this season, we've explored Leo's mission, which is to really set down our defenses and to truly shine no matter what, and to aim for that light to be radiating straight from our heart space. Not from our ego space, not from our will, but straight from the heart. And we've defined that heart space as just a new way of looking at connecting with our soul and what our soul came here to do and what our soul wants from us. It's the way our soul speaks human to us. It's the bridge between earthly and spiritual aspirations and dreams. Yes, so this week, to round out the work that we've done with the ego so far, which is pretty grueling work at times, it can be really grueling to work through, this week we get a little break and we get to play. Doesn't mean it's not going to be work, but we get to play this week. We're inviting more play, more creativity, more pleasure into our lives. We're continuing to practice treating ourselves like absolute royalty. Now I picture the big old lion, a big old lion sun basking on his rock, laying out in total luxury, complete surrender, not a care in the world, pawfully playing at the butterfly that flies by, or T's playing with his little lion cubs. This week is all about luxury and pleasure and play and surrender, creativity and self-expression. So first, let's get clear on any grossness or sticky narratives that you may have around these things. Ask yourself, really examine what is coming up for you already around this topic. As we're just diving in, is this feeling like, are you like, yeah, this is a discussion that I really need? Or are you experiencing some sort of contraction around this, some sort of resentment or doubt, or feeling like this won't be very worthwhile because it's focused on pleasure and fun instead of more heavier, serious stuff that expansive astrology usually brings? Are you worried that you don't have time for something like this? Are you worried about how other people in your life might react if you were to seriously sink into a place where pleasure and play are an everyday necessity? Are you already bartering with yourself, thinking making little deals, once I get this finished, then I'll be ready to play? Once the semester's over, then maybe I'll be able to play more. Once I lose 20 pounds, then I'll be able to experience more pleasure. Is there any sort of bartering going on? It's important, deep breath, it's important to be with that so that you can consider, how would you like to feel about play and pleasure and surrender and self-expression and creativity? What would you like those narratives to look like? It's important to acknowledge, note where we are, note where you are right now, and address those things. Be with those feelings, shine a light on them so that you can decide where you want to be instead. I'm going to ask this question a couple different times this week. How do you want to feel about that? Take that question very seriously. Don't let any sticky weirdness about deservingness or the value of this stuff get in the way before we've even gotten started. And remember, here's a little brain hack. Remember that most of what I bring in expansive astrology simply includes invitations and experiments. You're invited to experiment with extra play and pleasure this week. Considering it like simply an experiment can help you like dive in a little more fully without having any sort of pressure to be perfect or any sort of pressure of like making this some sort of commitment, huge commitment to some sort of change. Calling it an experiment can kind of help your brain get on board because it feels like exploration. It feels kind of temporary. It feels like I'm just going to try this out to see what it's like. Like there's not a real commitment there. And that can really help get your brain on board with these sorts of things. So we're experimenting with play and pleasure and self-expression and surrender. Let's talk about surrender. In some ways, surrender has always been a topic of conversation this season, but we just really haven't called it. We haven't identified it as surrender. But just thinking of the Strength card, the being on the card is approaching the lion within sacred undefendedness, and the lion is responding in the same way. That's surrender. Surrender is not, fuck it. Hands up, white flag, I'm done trying, like I'm done fighting. Surrender is not passivity. So it's not being a doormat. Surrender is an action. It's an intention. It's a purposeful choosing to be with what is. To set down defenses and to accept where you are and what's to come. Surrender is a trusting. It's setting aside any measures of attempted self-preservation, that big ego shit. And it's absolutely integral. Integral? How do I want to say that? How do you say that word? Integral. Integral. It's so important in experiencing pleasure and play. Sorry. Surrender is necessary in being able to experience pleasure and play. Think of an orgasm. In order to come requires, at least on some level, a release, right? A surrender, a relaxing, a welcoming. So again, if you have any weird brain stories around and or like doubt or contraction around your ability to surrender or the importance of surrender, get really clear on that, and we get to actively choose. How would you like to feel about surrender? Maybe right now it doesn't feel very safe. Maybe right now it doesn't feel worth it. Those are valid things to feel. Acknowledge that and be with that. And how would you like to feel about surrender? Both. Sit with both. Let's talk play. Dr. Stuart Brown, not Mr., Dr. Stuart Brown is the founder of the National Institute for Play, and he called play, quote, a state of being, which is purposeless, fun, and pleasurable, unquote. So let's chat about that word purposeless. Yeah, purposeless is needless activity. It's a focus on, play requires a focus on the moment, a focus on the actual experience rather than focusing on accomplishing some sort of goal. So for example, and I think this is the example Stuart Brown uses, playing poker and enjoying the hand, enjoying the skill, that's play. But doing slots with the goal of hitting the jackpot, that is not play. Because there's the goal of hitting the jackpot, and yeah, you can have fun and still play and be excited if you win the hand of poker, but that can't be, winning the hand can't be the most important thing. Dr. Brown studied play for decades and found that a lack of play is an important factor in predicting criminal behavior. And on the other hand, like having play as a norm in your life, in relationships, having play in relationships predicts deeper, it predicts emotional intimacy. So play is important. Play is so important. I thought it was very interesting that a lack of play is correlated with predicting criminal behavior. It's interesting. Play has been found to build community, sharpen our brains, and bring relationships closer together. Our need for play does not disappear as we grow out of childhood. And speaking of childhood, people call children magical. We look at a child and it's a miracle has occurred. It's magical. What do you think it is about children that is so magical? Do you think it could have anything to do with play? Because I do. Rhetorical question. I think it has a lot to do with play. And when we look at a child, we see how connected they are to themselves, often their emotional needs, their emotional bodies, and they are so connected to the present moment, right? Holy moly. And we get to really practice looking at the world around us through the eyes of a child. Children, like I said, they are so connected to the present moment. They notice everything. It's amazing. And like shit never gets old for them, right? The 500th dandelion wish is just as magical and has just as much potential in a child's heart as the first. Everything seems to be novel and worthy of exploring through the eyes of a child. We could all take a page out of a child's playbook. Can you experiment with doing that this month? Or even just this week? The only type of play that we tend to give ourselves as adults is competitive, or play that we somehow get paid for, or results in something. So take a moment to consider, ask yourself, what percentage of your life now includes play? And again, how would you like play to look in your life? What percentage of your life would you like to include play? And some people might not even know what that would look like, to be able to play more as an adult with responsibilities and bills. We really lose our ability to play and our permission to play as we grow into hardened, old, cold adults. So let's talk about that. Let's explore some of the how of play. And this is going to look relatively different for every person. So to kind of start to get an idea, I want you to consider, what did you do for play as a child? What were your favorite things to do as a kid? Did they include other people, other kids, imaginary friends? Were the things that you did like fueled by your imagination? That sounds like a verb. having to do with emojis or emotions. Sorry. Did play for you as a kid look quite imaginative, or did you more often play some sort of like a established game or a game that like had some sort of guide? Did you play alone? Did you prefer to play with others? Both? Really think about what your play style was like, if you will, your play style. Now, we kind of have to rethink play in adulthood, right? Because we know too much now. We've seen too many things to be able to play the same way. Like I said, we're hardened, old, cold adults now. So we kind of have to rethink what play looks like for us. And remember the definition from earlier. Play is a state of being in which we are doing things not for any real purpose aside from the fun and pleasure of it all. That has to be the main priority. So I really feel like sorry, my dog is just like staring at me so intently, like smiling, and it's really distracting. So I keep looking over at him. He's so sweet, so cute. Sorry. I think play as an adult really has to kind of include the everything of life, the chores, the mundane, the boring, that's when it matters most, in fact, right? And I think if we look at play in any other way, it's really easy to not prioritize and not find creative and new ways to incorporate it. If we really look at the mundane shit, the everyday, here and now, everyday shit, that's how we can start to embrace more play. Play requires mindfulness. So if mindfulness is something that's really hard for you or that you haven't really mastered yet, it's not something that I've really spoken about a whole lot in expansive astrology, I'm realizing. So do some work around that. Do some work around mindfulness and your ability to be in the moment where you are. So play as an adult, I have a little list. Play as an adult could look like talking to your dog, playing with your dog. It could look like doing a little twirl in the mirror or giving yourself finger guns before you walk away from your mirror in the morning. After you brush your teeth, give yourself some finger guns. It can look like putting on makeup even when you have nowhere to go, putting on makeup for no reason, if that's something that you enjoy. It can mean using and engaging your imagination, purposeful daydreaming, exploring, dreaming of your future, dreaming of how you want to decorate your future house, like engaging your imagination in fun ways. Giving yourself recess. You know, how long does recess last? Probably not very long these days, but I don't think recess was very long, right? I don't know. Give yourself recess. This is one thing that I used to be a cigarette smoker, and I know so many cigarette smokers. And it's one thing that cigarette smokers are very good at is giving themselves prioritizing breaks, right? They will prioritize going outside and taking 15 minutes to themselves, no matter what's going on sometimes, especially in the most stressful situations. I bet I used to get a lot more I don't know if you can call it fresh air if you're smoking a cigarette. But I probably got outside some percentage more often when I was a cigarette smoker than I do now. To be honest, I'm just now realizing that. I'm not saying pick up smoking. All due respect to you if you do smoke. I'm not saying to pick up smoking, right? But I'm saying to like adopt that ability. Like give yourself recess, prioritize breaks. They do it. You can do it. Pretend to be a smoker. Gosh. Other ways to play as an adult, giggling at funny things without reservation. Don't be shy. Giggle at the things that you think are funny. Well, I mean, don't be rude, but don't be so reserved. Play board games or video games or watch old Vine compilations. Read for pleasure. In grad school, it was kind of a joke that like, well, I can't wait to be able to read for pleasure. I can't wait to have the time to read for pleasure. And I wasn't the only one who told myself that. I know many people tell themselves that. Once I'm done with school, once I don't need to read textbooks anymore, I'll be able to read for pleasure. And I'm going to tell you now, if you're not prioritizing reading for pleasure right now, you're not going to prioritize reading for pleasure after grad school or after whatever. It's something that you need to prioritize now. And I get it. If you have to read hundreds of pages of textbooks per day, skim that shit and prioritize reading for pleasure. I don't feel like I'm being the best role model. Pick up smoking, don't read your textbooks all the way, and play more. That's this week's lesson. Just kidding. And actually, like, let's chat about that, right? If what I'm saying feels too frivolous, or when you think or imagine doing these things, if it does feel too frivolous, like I'm not saying pick up smoking, and I'm not saying don't prioritize your school, but I am saying prioritize breaks and play and pleasure, right? So if your brain is doing what my brain just did a little bit, although I was joking, give that brain a reality check. Other ways to play as an adult is making food in a really mindful way, experimenting with new recipes, having fun when you choose out ingredients from the grocery store. Feeding yourself can be really fun and playful if you choose to let it be, or it can be a chore that you just get done and shove it in. Dancing around. Listen to more music. Wear clothes that you feel great in and enjoy for no reason. You don't need a reason to get dressed up. You can wear the things that you love and that you feel the best in and that you feel like royalty in, even if you're not doing anything. Play catch with yourself. You know, when you need to, I always do this. And it's fun. It's dumb and it's fun and it's just a little thing. I do it with my makeup brushes. I do it with my pens. Try to catch your chips in your mouth. Get really good at that. Play catch with yourself. Make a craft or a DIY. Masturbate. Go out into the rain when it's raining. Jump in the puddle instead of step over it. Water your plants. Celebrate everything possible, which requires having pride for yourself, which we addressed last week, right? We mastered having pride last week, right? Not a problem for you anymore. Celebrate everything possible, because why not? And I think that is such a special, wonderful way to play and to express gratitude for your life and where you are in your life. Celebrate the little things. It could be anything. You gotta compliment. Really celebrate that. You're halfway through the semester. Really celebrate that. Celebrate the full moon and the new moon if you like doing that. Like, really make it a celebration. Celebrate when other people have exciting things going on. Really celebrate other people. What a great way to allow yourself and your love to shine, by celebrating, finding things to celebrate all the time and finding ways to celebrate. Cheers to nothing randomly. Get really excited to split a pack of peanut butter cups with somebody and cheers them and celebrate that it's been a really good day. Find reasons to celebrate. I think that's a really great way to incorporate play and pleasure. Even if you just call things celebrating. I'm celebrating doing my laundry. Celebrating my dog's birthday. Like, find all kinds of reasons to celebrate. Celebrating that my menstrual cycle ended today. You know, it could be, you can find things to celebrate all the time. Now, we can't have this sort of discussion on surrender and celebration and play and call it complete without talking about the number one killer of play, if you ask me: shame. Shame totally gets in the way of play, and it totally gets in the way of our ability to surrender. So let's shift for a moment and chat about finding comfort with shamelessness. Shame and vulnerability researcher and author and brilliant woman, Brené Brown, describes shame as, quote, the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging, unquote. I'm going to say it again. It's the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love or belonging. That is predatory brain chemistry if I've ever heard it, right? It's this function of our brain that treats us like we're weak prey and like we deserve to be isolated from the rest of the world or from good things, from protection. The very nature of what shame is makes it difficult to share our experience with other people. It keeps us away from other people. Out of self-preservation, we keep thoughts and feelings that create shame to ourselves, and secrets create shame. So it perpetuates itself and it keeps us isolated. So it's so important. It keeps us like unwilling to get vulnerable and surrender. And if we're unwilling to get vulnerable and surrender, then it's really hard to find play and pleasure, right? So I have 5 steps to managing shame. The first, step 1 in managing shame, is naming it to yourself first, and bonus points if you can name it with somebody else, because secrets create shame. Shame grows in silence. There are times when I don't want to tell my partner what I'm thinking because I don't want him to talk me out of it or remind me that I'm somehow wrong. So there are times where I know that I should share something with my partner, like, hey, this has really been on my mind. Can you help me through this? Like, what's going on? I know that there are times when I should say something to my partner, and I like become aware that my brain is like, don't say that because then it's going to go away. And for whatever reason, my brain wants to stay in that place. And I know that if I share it, it will be lessened. I know I'm not the only one. So name the things that are like going on that are creating shame. If not to somebody else, at least like name it, acknowledge it to yourself. And then step 2 is getting more objective so that you can find the more constructive emotion. Is like, get objective and really explore, is shame even like the accurate thing that I should be feeling right now? Is that the most accurate way to describe what's coming up right now? Really tease it apart, because shame sometimes comes up. We sometimes go to that place of, oh, I'm somehow unworthy of love or belonging. Ugh, such a horrible feeling, right? But sometimes that can come up in place of guilt or humiliation, emotions like that, where guilt means I did something bad. So you feel a certain way about doing something bad. And humiliation is when someone else made you feel less than. And in that case, like, you don't deserve to feel shame. You don't deserve to feel like you are unworthy of love and belonging. In the case of humiliation, it's like, I can't believe my boss called me out for being late in front of everybody. That's humiliation. I can't believe I was late is shame. So really acknowledging, determining, getting specific with yourself on what is actually coming up for you is important in managing it. Step 3 is having a solid sense of who you are outside of feedback from others, outside of what you do. Divorce your self-worth from the reactions of others. If you had an idea and other people didn't like your idea, it doesn't mean that your idea was bad. It just means that they didn't like your idea. It doesn't mean that you should never share your ideas. If you get dumped, it means the relationship wasn't right. Something was wrong in that relationship, not that you are unlovable or a failure as a partner, right? Divorce what happens to you from your sense of self-worth. Divorce your identity from these external things so that you can feel full and whole and worthy of love and belonging, regardless of what happens outside of you. Step 4 is being very aware of your triggers and what activates you. Be aware of what you're sensitive about and how it comes up for you. The things that trigger our insecurities encourage us often to default to shame. So, for example, a person who is insecure about their contribution to the home or their ability to provide might default to feeling shame if their partner mentions the neighbor's new car. And they might interpret that pretty innocent comment, that neutral observation, as an attempt of attack, as an attempt to shame the person, right? Really being aware of those things that are more likely to make you feel shame, so that you can be aware of when you're interpreting something wrong. And then step 5 is to make more connections. You can really hack the system by making more connections. Shame is in so many ways a fear of disconnection, right? A fear of being an outsider. It's the way our superego critiques us. It's the way our brains keep us isolated from others. So if we connect to others more, and if we strengthen our ability and our willingness to be vulnerable and be seen and to shine, our shame diminishes. Remember, shame is not a helpful emotion. It is not a constructive emotion. Guilt, if you've done something wrong, guilt is a constructive emotion. Shame doesn't help. So connect more. Yeah. Managing our shame is essential in allowing ourselves to experience play and pleasure. We need to have a full sense of permission for pleasure. No shame attached. Permission for pleasure. Leo's invitation and ability to live from the heart space is, in my opinion, one of the truest keys to really unlocking the strengths of Leo within us. Remember that empowered Leo is confident, magnetic, creative, shameless, giving, zesty. Empowered Leo operates from the heart. And pleasure and play, pleasure is the language of the soul. Leo asks us to smile for no reason, to share the selfie without fear of appearing vain, to express ourselves creatively and fully without reserve, to roar. Leo asks us to roar. Sorry, Katy Perry. I also want to remind you that you are magnetic, especially when we're in a state of pleasure and surrender. We are magnetic. A desperate magnet doesn't exist. A questioning, unsure, uneasy magnet, I feel like I'm saying magnet weird. It doesn't exist. A desperate magnet does not exist. A magnet effortlessly pulls and polarizes just in its nature by being. And I truly believe that play and pleasure is our natural state. It is, right? It's how we are before it's beaten out of us when we grow up. Play and pleasure is our natural state, and the more we experience those things, the more we experience those things. What we appreciate appreciates. We see that, we know how important gratitude is, right? The more we experience play and pleasure, the more play and pleasure we will experience. Self-preservation, big ego energy, desperation, undeservingness, shame, defensiveness, those are the antithesis of play and pleasure. We're magnetic. We attract what we seek. We attract what we are, and we repel the rest. So if you embrace and embody a life full of pleasure and play and creativity and shamelessness, those things will strengthen and grow within you and in your world, and you'll begin to polarize the opposite. You'll begin to polarize the desperation and the undeservingness and the shame and the defensiveness. I'm certain of it. So I leave you with the whole of the poem that our affirmation for this week comes from. This is The Charge of the Goddess by Doreen Valiente. Doreen Valiente. I think that's how it's pronounced. That's how it's spelled. Let my worship be within the heart that rejoices. For behold, all acts of love and pleasure are my ritual. Therefore, let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence within you. Thank you so much for being here. I really hope this served. Let me know how this is landing for you and how you plan to embrace play, pleasure, surrender in your everyday life. Every day. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. Take extra great care of yourselves. Experiment with more fun. I love you. Take care. I'll see you next time.